Hi. Welcome to Church for Skeptics. Is morality real? My favorite argument for the existence of God, there are many, and I think they're all good ones, most all of them. And my favorite, however, is the moral argument. It goes like this, it's very simple. If morality exists, objective morality exists, then God must exist, number one. Number two, objective morality does exist. There is such a thing as right and wrong. Therefore, God must exist. C.S. Lewis, in his Mere Christianity, opens his great book with that whole idea. And he starts like this. He says, this is how we talk. We can't help but speak as if objective morality is real. Here's how we talk in the playground. That's not fair. You shouldn't do that. It's my turn on the swing. The first fight I ever had, and I didn't have a lot of fights. I was more of a lover than a fighter. But in the first grade, I was trying to get my turn on the swing. I went to the last one-room schoolhouse in Massachusetts in the first grade near Boston. And the bully of the class would not let anybody else on the swing. And we were arguing with him. That's, hey, it's my turn. It's somebody's turn. You've been on there long enough. And he said, who says? Well, that's the right question, of course. Who says it's your turn on the swing? What authority do you have about right and wrong? Well, if there is no God, there is no authority or meaning behind the ideas of right and wrong. So, if objective morality is real, if there is a real right and wrong, then God must exist. Now, there are opponents to that argument, of course, as usual, and that breaks down to two different things. There are two rejoinders, I guess, against morality and objective morality, and so they're all reductionist. In other words, I'm going to mention two of them here, the primary two. One of them is the materialist view. Materialism would say objective morality doesn't exist. It's nothing but something less. That's why we call it a reduction. It reduces the idea of morality to something less, something that's less meaningful, of course. Morality on evolution, on Darwinism, is just an altruistic instinct for survival. In other words, over the millions of years of human reproduction and human existence, the idea is there were some people, some humans, that randomly got a gene, a genetic disposition for altruism. They were sympathetic, empathetic to the suffering of other people. Well, if you get enough empathetic people together and they help one another in response to that altruistic gene, then we get better, we do survive. And so the idea is evolution goes on then, the world is going to get, you can't say better because there is no better, there is no goal of progress here, but you could say the world is getting more peaceful. Really, it's only been a little less than 80 years, I think, since Auschwitz. So I don't know that we could say the world is getting more peaceful or better. Maybe there's a respite between conflicts, and not really that even, just like the rest of history. But the real problem with that opposition is this: it doesn't explain morality. It's explaining something else. And here's a way to look at it. It's explaining, if evolution were true, I don't think it is, but if it were an explanation at all, it would explain what is. We're just getting more peaceful because we have this altruistic genetic disposition. That's what is, but that's not what morality is. Morality is not what exists, it's what should exist and often does not. That's what morality is. Morality is an ought. It is it's a prescription. It's not an explanation of what is, it's a prescription of what ought to be. That's what morality is, and that's how we live. And surely, I don't know of anybody really that would say the world is exactly like it should be, or like it is, and has nothing to do with right or wrong or what it should be. Most everybody has an axe to grind, a good moral axe to grind. Um, so it doesn't work. This whole idea of altruistic genes and evolutionary progress, if there is such a thing, doesn't work at all. Even Richard Dawkins says, I can't live that way. On the one hand, Richard Dawkins would say there is no right or wrong, there is no good and evil, there's just a blind, pitiless indifference to the universe. On the other hand, kind of out of the other side of his mouth, Richard Dawkins says, yeah, I still call people to account for doing the wrong thing. And he does it all the time because that's what makes us human. That's what human beings do. The other thing that C.S. Lewis would say before I leave this one for the next one is this. Not only do we know, if I say that's not fair, I'm going to expect the other person to understand the same thing. He's going to understand I'm saying what you did is wrong, or what you did is right, or what you should do is the right thing, and we expect them to know that. And by the way, most of the times they do know that. But the other thing is this: nobody's perfect, and everybody would say, I'm not perfect. In other words, I know there is an objective morality. I don't live up to it. Not completely, not perfectly. It doesn't work to say evolution. Second thing is this. What about this? That was the materialist rejoinder. The second would be postmodernism. The postmodernists would say morality is just, here again a reduction, morality is just cultural standards. It's just whatever group is in charge, whatever tribe exists, they make their own rules as they go along. And so one culture has one set of standards, one culture has another set of standards, and another, and so forth. And really, again, same thing. They're not explaining morality. They're not explaining what really should happen. They're explaining what does happen because the majority rules. Whether it's dress codes or marriage rules, it's just up for grabs by that particular majority. There's several things wrong with that. That just doesn't work. Number one, of course, is that it doesn't explain morality itself. It explains it away. Morality is just, it's not morality anymore, it's mores, customs. But there are several problems with that. The first one is, if no culture is better than another culture, and of course there's no who says somebody else ought to have the swing. Well, it's his culture against mine. His culture says, no, it's my swing. My culture says, no, it's not your swing, it's everybody's swing, and so we ought to take turns. But it's just cultural differences. And so how would I say, no, you're wrong and I'm right? And the only way I could say that is if there is a transcendent, moral, objective set of standards that is outside of both of us. The same thing with cultural morality. After World War II, the Nuremberg trials took place, very historic thing. And the defendant for the Nazis, now 23 or 24 Nazi war criminals were arraigned and subjected to judgment at the Nuremberg trials. The defender for the criminals said this: you can't try these people. They're not criminals because they did everything in accordance with the government rules, the laws of Nazi Germany, the Third Reich, from 1933 to 1945. And so who's to say what is better than them? How can your Western culture, well, of course they were part of the Western culture, how can we say they're wrong and we're right when who says? Who says they're better than me? And so in accordance to postmodernism, every tribe, every culture, every nation has its own rules. Robert Jackson was the Supreme Court judge that Harry Truman put in charge of the prosecution. And his idea was this: no, there is a transcendent, objective, moral law. They used to call it the law of human nature, just that we know humanly that there are some things that are wrong, some things that are right. And of course, that's what happened. My point is this: if there is no judgment of cultures themselves that is outside of that culture, then there's no way to tell what's right and wrong. It's not wrong to think that women in some Islamic cultures are just property. But we know better. My point is, we know better. We know that there are some things that are better. There are some cultures, and there's no perfect culture, of course. We're not saying that, but we know that there are some cultural things that are better than other cultural things because they're both measured towards a transcendent, objective morality that is better than both. So I go back to my original point here. If there is such a thing as morality, God has to exist. There has to be a who says. There has to be a purpose, a meaning behind our whole existence, a moral purpose, a right and wrong. And I think that's why I think it's a favorite argument, because once we come to that realization that there is such a thing as objective morality, a right and wrong, I know that I haven't met that standard. And if I haven't met their standard, I'm going to be judged. And so I'm in desperate need for forgiveness. Jesus is the only person that provides for that forgiveness when he died on the cross and rose again. I hope this makes sense to you. Have a great day. Thanks a lot.